Ladies and gentlemen, 40 waters of all generations, welcome to episode 30. 30 episodes into this madness. But I really appreciate y'all that have all come along for the ride, whether you are new here, this is your first episode, or if you've been with me since the first 4 episodes where I talked by myself and it was god-awful. But if you've been here that long, bless you. But I appreciate y'all hanging out. Going to take care of, some housekeeping things here in the beginning. First of all, I want to thank all my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Got a couple of you guys who have upgraded to the $5 tier to get all that Patreon exclusive content. There's starting to accumulate some stuff over there. So make sure you go to patreon.com/40watt podcast. Support the show. $3 a month gets you in. I send you a couple of neat little things like stickers and buttons, and you know that you're helping make this podcast possible, covering a lot of the fees that go along with this. You would think this wouldn't be expensive, but it costs me a decent amount of money every month just for hosting fees and those kinds of things. StreamYard costs me money. But also, what I like to do is that 25% of the proceeds from my Patreon go to St. Jude, this year are going to St. Jude Children's Hospital. I'm going to go to a different charity every year. And y'all, this isn't salesman mumbo jumbo. This isn't, yes, it's an incentive to get you to support the show, but more importantly, it's an incentive to get you to support St. Jude. I raise money for St. Jude every year. I've done it mostly through running the marathon. I've run St. Jude Marathon twice. I've run some other races and raised money for St. Jude. I think I'm over the $5,000 mark that I've raised money for St. Jude, which not this year, not through Patreon. I wish. Maybe we can get to that point one day, but we're not there yet. But at the end of this year, I'm going to give 25% of the Patreon proceeds over to St. Jude, and y'all can help make that happen. Little as $3 a month. As much as $50 a month, or as much as you want to. At $50 a month, I'll give you lessons. We'll play guitar together. I'll teach you bass, keys, music theory. It doesn't matter. We'll do it. We'll just sit and talk if that's your jam. Also, go to our website, 40wattpodcast.com, or go to our link tree, linktr.ee/40wattpodcast. You'll find all the links, social media, our Reverb affiliate link. I really appreciate that. If you go to Reverb, if you use that link and anything you buy on Reverb, I'm going to get a little kickback. I haven't talked about that in a few weeks. You already buy on Reverb. Come on, guys. I know you do. So hit the link. Not a big deal. Jerry says no, but I know a lot of you do buy on Reverb. If you don't have a Reverb account, click that link, sign up for Reverb, and then never use it. I still get a kickback just for you joining. It's cool. It's very awesome, and I appreciate it. It helps support the show. Having said all of that, I think I've covered everything. Yes, that is everything for now. There's going to be some more exciting things coming down the road for the Patreon exclusive content. I'm going to maybe add some special content besides just extra stuff with the guests. Y'all hang out for that. I'm going to give you my last little preface going into this episode. I am fighting a nasty sinus infection, so I'm going to do my best to mute all of my coughs, but I can't promise anything. So this episode, while I'm not sponsored, this episode is brought to you by Walgreens cough drops. They're really getting me through this one. So done. That's it. My self-shilling is over. Y'all go to those things. Today's episode, I've got Jeremy the Guitar Hunter.
Hey.
Jeremy Sheppard. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I am super pumped to be talking to you because I watched your channel for a little bit, and you do on a much higher level what I used to do in like the early 2000s to make spending money.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, I probably was doing it in the early 2000s too.
Well, yeah, I got out of it because
I got out of it for a long time too, but
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell our listeners who might not be familiar with what you do, Jeremy, first of all, you're a YouTuber, is your primary what you do.
Yeah.
And you just buy and sell guitars and talk vintage instruments and not so vintage instruments. And so how'd you get into this?
Yeah. So the problem that I try to fix in the world is that it takes guitar players way too long to find the right guitars for them. And so I am addicted to buying and selling guitars. Every town I go to, I'm going to swing in a pawn shop. I'm going to look in a guitar shop. I'm going to try and find cool guitars. It's just kind of who I am. And so years ago, I was living outside of New Orleans. I was buying and selling a bunch of guitars. And I just looked on YouTube. I was like, I wonder if there's anybody just like showing what it's like to buy vintage guitars. And I couldn't really find anybody. And so I borrowed a buddy's camera. I bought a 68 0028, a Martin, and just that was kind of it. And then that was my first video that kind of started doing stuff. And I was like, okay, I'll do more of this. And the reason I was joking you about Reverb earlier is that's my first video that blew up was me saying, I'm quitting Reverb.
I saw that one.
Yeah.
In fact, it might have been the first one I saw of yours, to be honest.
Probably. I mean, it was like, if you look at my analytics, it's like nothing, 200,000 views, and then back to nothing for a while. But yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because I'm a very optimistic, like happy person, and that's just 12 minutes of me complaining about Reverb costing me $1,000 by just having bad buyers for a while.
I was about to say, let's talk about that video for a second, because that was a pretty significant one. That was for those of you that have not seen that video. The links to his YouTube channel are down below in the description of either in the notes of the podcast or the video. While you're down there, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, hit the thumbs up, rate and review, all those things. I forgot to mention it earlier. Please, that's a free way you can support the podcast. Okay, back to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So in that video, you talked about you were selling a guitar, and you had a string of like 3 buyers in a row. Was it?
I had 2 buyers back to back. Well, okay, so I had 2 buyers back to back on the same guitar, but I had 5 transactions in a row, in which it was the same kind of MO. It was a vintage guitar. Most of them were Gibsons. There was a Martin in there. I had a 69 SG, Anyway, I don't want to give too many details, but basically I had a 69 SG. I sold it. A guy came back and said, you said this was an inch and 11/16 nut. It's an inch and 9/16. I want $1,000 off. It's like, nope. Just send it back. I'll give you your money back. He's like, no, give me $500. I was like, nope. And then Reverb was like, I mean, he would be happy if you give him $500. I was like, I would be happy if, I'd be happy if I just got the guitar back. So that was the first one. Then I sold a Martin 12 string, and it all culminated when, and this is also just at the most stressful time of my life, is the day that I'm moving my family 1,000 miles across the country. I get an email from a guy who just bought a guitar, and he'd already told me he's happy with it. And all of a sudden, you're a con man. This is terrible. I want my money back. Give me my money back today. And you have to pay shipping to get the guitar back too. And I was like, hey man, sorry, can't deal with this. I'm moving today. I will be out of pocket for 5 days until I get settled in Virginia. And during that time, he sent it to Reverb. Reverb said that I had to give his money back. They wanted me to give his money back before I got the guitar back, which I said, absolutely not.
No.
And then Reverb tried to take money out of my account without my approval. So all of a sudden I saw a debit it was like $2,200. And the other thing with this guitar was that the issues he said he had with it were, he had 3 complaints: that there was an old neck crack, that there was some finish repair, and the top was saggy. And in all 3 of those, if you look at the description in the guitar, because I always write a really solid description, and in the description it's like, hey, there's 4 things wrong with this guitar. There's a neck crack, there's some finish work, there's a saggy top. It's all been checked out, it's all been fixed. But this is, a pretty normal, mid 60s, late 60s ES175. Still patent number pickups, still a really cool guitar. If this was a 335, you'd pay twice the price, 3 times the price. And Reverb just said, we have to keep our buyers happy. And so they were willing to, they said that if I didn't give him his money back, that they were going to delete my account. And I had 600 transactions at that time. And
wow.
I was top rated in everything, fast shipping, quick response, all the hoops you have to jump through. And so they told me that they were going to delete my account. And so that's when I was like, I guess I'm just going to explain what happened in a YouTube video. And and so what happened, what I saw, and that was like the summer of 2018, was that I saw Reverb has been amazing at getting people to buy used guitars.
Right.
And most of those people have never owned old guitars before, and they've never been around old guitars. And that's the thing, is people that have only played like Epiphone Dots are all of a sudden buying, the reasonable priced, basically the player's grade or the problem vintage stuff. And they get it and they're like, this plays nothing like my Epiphone. This thing's a piece of junk. Then they freak out. So that's my whole thing, is that just reverb is amazing for clean stuff with no issues. But that's just not usually what I end up finding and buying and what I dig.
Well, that's a really good point that probably, needs to be made again. So you used to work in a vintage guitar shop. That's what you did. And as someone who's played a bunch of vintage guitars, I haven't owned a ton of vintage guitars, but because there's a reason. I think they're cool. I think they've got a great vibe. But I'm a pretty modern player, even though I play roots, Americana, blues stuff. You know what I mean? I like a guitar that's gonna set up and play, and I don't have to fight some of the idiosyncrasies of a vintage guitar. But that's the thing: vintage guitars have idiosyncrasies. They're old and crotchety. They age just like we do. They tell people to get the hell off their fretboard. You know what I mean? It's like so you've got to learn that when you get a vintage guitar, the same guitar, same year, same model, hell, same finish, we'll call it. You know what I mean? They're all going to have some quirk about them that isn't 100%, and you learn to work around that quirk.
Yeah.
But if you're not into that vibe and you just want a great playing, easy playing guitar, don't go vintage guitar.
Especially when you look at the price of custom shops, like John Schultz, who's a really good friend of mine who runs True Vintage Guitar. Man, his whole thing is like, you probably shouldn't buy a vintage guitar. You probably should buy a custom shop or a reissue, because you'll get a guitar that looks like, feels like, but is tweaked in a lot better in a lot of ways for way less than, look at like a good dot reissue, $3,000, 3,500 used.
Yeah.
Like, compare that to a 60s, no chance.
No.
And then you're going to get that, and it's not, they're cool, but man, they're still like, they got ruddy fingerboards, and they've got old fretwork, and the necks have humps in them.
Old pots if they're original. They've the tuners, if you've still got the original tuners on them, there's inevitably some maintenance and upkeep that's going to happen there. Yeah. And you get a vintage guitar, like say you buy a 60s, say 1960, which is actually 61. So easy math right here, right? That's a 60-year-old guitar at this point.
Yeah.
Things are going to fail. When you get it, it may be all original, and it may be fun to say, oh, it's all original, but you're going to get it, and you're going to be like, all right, I need to pull these tuners off and put them in a case and put some modern tuners on there. I need to switch out the electronics for some modern electronics, because these are scratchy or dying or noisy.
And scratchy and don't ground out.
Yeah.
Try this and that.
And so these... people talk about things being built to last, but these things are not built to last forever. Things are going to degrade. They're wood. It's an organic material. It's going to shrink and shift and change, and it's wood and wire. It's not going to last forever.
Yeah, and sometimes they're really magical, but they lose vitality, right? I don't know how, like, did you see there's recently a video of my mind is going blank. James Taylor.
Oh.
I'll take... Okay, so there's a video recently of James Taylor talking about his guitar collection. He's in this room full of old guitars. He's got his Fire and Wine J50. It's like a late 60s Gibson J50. He's got a Jim Olsen it's a parlor size that he's never even played. But he keeps talking about how he's like, guitars aren't like violins. Violins get beautiful and they last for 200 years. But guitars wear out and lose their tone. And I think he is so full of shit there. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I don't know about losing tone, but
I think it's a dude it's a dude who's been able to eat, not like metaphorically, he has lived at a level of eating lobster every day.
Right.
And all of a sudden, of course, it's like, hey, like, you have played the best guitars in the world for 60 years, And of course, nothing is that interesting to you.
Right.
But yeah, I think practically when you look at 40s, 50s, 60s Gibsons, like what he's pointing out, most of them sound really good. Like I've got a really great J45 here in the middle, back behind me, a 61 J45 that is, I mean, the neck has been cracked. There's 3 cracks in the top. There's 4 cracks in the back. There's a crack in the side. The bridge has been swapped, and it sounds ridiculously good. So anyway, they don't all sound good, but no. But they're all weird and quirky. And the thing is, like, you can either have a clean, perfect guitar, or you can own cool guitars you can afford. Like, those two aren't going to match up.
No.
You don't get to be picky.
And especially, just to bring it back to the original, genesis of this conversation, and buying online, you don't get to see and feel what those quirks are. You don't get to hear what quirky personality that this, 1963 J45 has. You don't get to hear, you don't get to see. You just read a description that says, oh, there was a crack in the neck at one point that's been repaired, or, oh, the top split, but it's been repaired. You can't really tell the quality of that repair, what it feels or sounds like afterwards. I don't know. Yeah, and to bring back to the point, custom shop, you're right, man. Especially like the Fender custom shop. Granted, guys, y'all listeners, guys and gals, y'all know who I am. I'm a Gibson guy. I love Gibson guitars. Do I think they make some pretty shitty decisions sometimes? Yes, I do. But I will still love Gibson guitars. I've got several on a rack behind me. But they see, look, y'all, I'm on sinus drugs. I forgot exactly where I was going. Thinking about Gibsons now. I love Gibsons. But the custom shops, Fender, that's where I was going to go. The Fender custom shop right now is killing it.
Absolutely.
Killing it. They've gone back to vintage specs on almost everything they're putting out, where they had sort of shifted on a few little things. And I mean, we're talking minute things like material for the dots on the neck. You know what I mean? They're back to what those are supposed to be. The only things they're not doing the way they were originally in the custom shop are the things they can't because I don't know, either had asbestos or they just aren't available anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Fender custom shop, you're looking at what, $3-4 grand for a custom shop? You know how much a 64 Strat's going to cost you today? I don't know, because the price goes up so much.
The price, so I haven't owned any pre-CBS Strats personally, but I've bought and sold a bunch, or I used to sell a bunch when I worked in the guitar shop. And man, with those, I mean, they're not where they once were, which is still crazy. Like, as crazy as they are, in 2006, I could sell a weird color. I could sell a rare color, 50s or 60s, for 50 grand, 60 grand, pretty easy. We could get somebody just line up. And what happened was these dealers, because they were a couple $100 15 years before that.
Right.
Like early 90s, you could get, like, the guy I used to work for, he closed his shop, and when he did, he sold just unbelievable stuff. Like, he had 2 Gretsch White Falcons. He had a 59 and a 60 Burst. And he just had crazy stuff. And he had like a Sonic Blue, I think it was a Sonic Blue Strat. And what he was telling me is he bought it for $250 in the late 70s just because it was cool. And he just hung on to it. And we sold it for $65,000. And but what he said and what we saw during that time was that these dealers would buy them cheap, sell them to somebody. Then somebody would want another, I'm more of a Gibson guy. I want to move into a 335 or a 355. So we traded on a 60s 355. And then you get this. So basically these dealers kept like buying and selling and buying and selling and buying. And what happened is the financial crash in 2007, most dealers got caught holding the bag. And so that's how like George and Norm and Carter's, which Carter wasn't around then, I don't think.
No, they weren't.
But the family was buying and selling guitars then. But basically you got to where like, Norm, that's why he has this warehouse of guitars. And the thing is, he probably still paid way too much 15 years ago.
Right. Like him selling those today, he's not selling them for the money he's got into them anymore.
He's probably, and this is total speculation, but I would bet on a lot of those rare color, like a lot of the Fender stuff that now is still crazy. It's still not as crazy as it was 15 years ago. Wow. Because now, maybe 2 years ago, I tried to buy a 60 Strat from the second owner. And the only mod it had on it was there was a big meaty hole in the back of the guitar, kind of above the tremolo cavity. And that was he had one of those ZZ Top, like the ZZ Top buckle things.
Oh, where it's like a big so you could spin the guitar?
Could spin. And it was a weird experience. I meant to be there at this guy's house for like an hour or two. I was there for 6 hours. And he's like showing me old videos that he'd put on to like old grainy film videos of him in Germany playing in a Devo cover band. And it was weird, man.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I offered that guy $14,000 for a Sunburst 60, and he wouldn't take it. He wouldn't take less than 20. And I'm pretty sure he still has it. But
that is wild.
Yeah. But all that coming back to the custom shop, get a custom shop. Like, my friend Mark Hopkins, who does the podcast At Home with Mark.
Yeah.
He just he brought his Wildwood custom. It's a Wildwood 10, and his is a 60, and it is better than the real one that I offered $14,000 for.
See, and I'm a big believer, and I just happen to have it next to me because I cleaned up and rearranged the studio today. I feel like I'm always rearranging the studio.
Me too.
I'm a big believer at this point. As much as I'm a Gibson guy, and I'll always be a Gibson guy, I've got, I don't know, some 20 and 25-year-old Gibsons behind me. A couple of new ones. I've got one of the newer Les Pauls from after JC took over and shifted it back to the specs that it should have been always for a Les Paul standard.
Robot tuners? Like how they should be.
No, I'm all about, I, for one, welcome our robotic overlords. Anyway, It's a 2019 Gold Top. Love that thing. Love that guitar. And I honestly, I think I mentioned it in last week's episode with Mike Piera, Analog Man. I think guitar companies are making some of the best quality guitars that have ever been made today.
Absolutely.
And I'm not talking just custom shop. I'm talking the American Pro 2 series from Fender is better.
I've got one right back here behind me. I think that is better than any Strat they've made in a long freaking time.
So I've got, as I fling things around, I've got this one. This is an American Pro 1. It's not the Pro 2. It's the all rosewood neck.
Oh, so before you jumped on, I was trying to figure out what you have back there.
Oh yeah, that's what this is.
That is freaking cool. Is that Sonic or Daphne?
Daphne Blue. It's in Daphne Blue.
Cool.
Yeah, it's such a cool guitar. I got it on a trade because I too am a chronic gear, buy, sell, and trader. But it has made its way into, it's not going anywhere. This is my Strat. This is my Strat.
Cool. That's how I feel with this. Like, this is
that's
my
a Miami
Strat.
Blue, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that color. That's so good.
Dude, this is, this was like the first like bigger YouTube like launch from a brand that I got to be a part of. And they sent me this and they said, hey, we're just going to let you borrow it. We'll pay you to do the video. And, afterwards we'll get you a label. It'll be easy. You can just send it back to us. And afterwards they were like, hey, your video was awesome. We're so excited to work with you. Just keep the guitar.
That's so cool.
Dude, it was, I mean, it's like, it's made me.
So on that one, I'm curious because honestly, I just discovered literally this week on this one. I'm really bad for just now discovering this because I was thinking about rewiring because I'm a big believer in having a tone knob for the bridge pickup. I think there's some tones there that you want to have. This one is a tone knob for the bridge pickup. It does the middle and the bridge. Does yours do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it does the. I filmed my whole demo and didn't know because I didn't read anything. I didn't read any directions. And I also kind of did that so that I would come in with my actual perspective.
That's a good point.
Instead of like, I try to not watch other people's stuff before I do a thing. And even if I do, like my perspective is always different. But anyway, I did the whole video before I even knew about this push
Oh yeah.
To
See,
add
this one
the
doesn't
neck
have
pickup
that.
to the bridge. Yeah. It's cool. I mean, if you love tellies, it makes a Strat do the thing that Strats don't do and tellies do.
Yeah, that whole bridge neck position.
That like really warm, like bright but jangly thing. The series.
Yeah, no, I dig that. And so I think the Fender American Pros they're making now are better quality than the guitars they were making in the 50s and 60s. That is going to rile some people up.
I agree.
Or,
I also think Fenders from the early 90s, the standards are really, really good.
The Strat that I have. So I was a Strat guy. I used to be a Strat guy. I mean, I got a Strat tattooed on my arm. Let me see.
Oh boy,
yeah,
that's awesome.
I mean, I was a Strat guy. The Strat I was playing was a '95 American Standard.
Cool.
And it got stolen in our band trailer. And we never saw any of that stuff again. I lost a couple of cool guitars in that band trailer, amp. We lost our drum kit, PA, the whole 9 yards.
Sheesh.
And it has taken me until now to find another Strat that I can connect with at all.
That's awesome.
Because Strats are just they're that animal, they're just hard for me.
That's where I'm like, I feel like there's like the four horsemen, right? So there's like a Strat, a Tele, a Les Paul, and a 335.
Yep.
And everybody finds one or two of those sounds that just is the sound that you hear in your head when you think of an electric guitar. And so for me, it's a Tele bridge pickup and a Strat neck pickup. Like those are the two sounds that, like, if I'm playing in a band, those are the sounds I want. And but it's yep.
I feel that way about the 335.
Yes.
And I don't own a 335.
I don't either. I want one.
Me too.
I sold one.
I've got a 137
like
custom. That's this one right here. It's a 137 custom. So it's semi-hollow, but it's in the 175 body shape, but the thinner body. And,
does it have a Florentine cutaway, or is it a rounded cutaway?
It does have the Florentine.
Freaking! Yeah, that's my. If I ever do a custom guitar, that's my like. They're just so spicy and so cool. Oh my gosh, that thing is so beautiful.
So yeah, I added the Bigsby just because I like vibrato. I have to have it. I think that's coming from the Strat background, is like that I like to have it. But it's the 137 custom. So it means it's got all the special inlays and the split diamond on the headstock. And
that is cool.
Yeah, I
don't think I've ever seen one quite like that.
Yeah, I see a couple of them pop up every now and again for sale on Reverb, but it did not sell well. I'm just going to be real honest. They had the 137, which was the 137 Classic, and I played a few of those, did not like them. I did not think they were good guitars.
Well, because I saw a bunch of the 135s, and they feel like a cheap guitar.
That's what the red one is over here. And
sorry.
No, you're good. No, you're fine.
But that's where... there are a couple of those that just kind of missed, but I'm sure that there are still great ones in there. Like I think the, what's that other one? The Midtown Custom. Those are like tragically underpriced. Like look at how much 339s aren't going for crazy money, but a 339 and a Midtown Custom are so similar.
Yeah, they're very,
I
very
don't
similar.
understand why they're $900.
No. Well, so with this 135, I got this one in the late 2000s because I had a buddy of mine playing Godin Montreal's, and shout out to Matthew if you're listening. And I became obsessed with his guitar sound, and I knew I needed a semi-hollow. Really? Also, like my biggest influences all played semi-hollow guitars.
Okay.
And so I went on to, and we'll talk about this here in a minute because we're going to talk about getting into buy, selling, and trading and how we got into this. I went on the Seymour Duncan user group forum, which I used to be really, really active on. I think a few of those former members listen to this podcast. And I put it out there in their buy, sell, trade forum. I said, I've got $1,000. I want a semi-hollow guitar. Who's got what for sale? Show me what you got. And I got a couple of things that popped up, a couple of Gretches, a couple of other stuff. And I'm not a Gretsch person.
I got an Epiphone Sheraton too. I'll sell you for $1,000.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I got a couple of those. Mostly over there though, they're pretty mature and pretty cool. They're not.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I like the Seymour Duncan group. I still go over there. I'm not as active as I used to be.
I haven't been on there in years.
Yeah, you ought to check those guys out.
I used to be on there.
It's some pretty mature folks over there, unlike a couple of other gear forum pages that I won't talk about. So
I avoid them.
That's a barb that's going to get me in trouble, I think.
Yeah.
But so a guy on there whose username is Rockstar Nick, who's still around. He's still on the forums.
Awesome.
He messaged me and said, "Hey, dude, I got your guitar." Said, "Here it is. This is I think it's an 04, 02. It's an 02.
Oh, cool.
It's an 02 with Lindy Fralins already installed. Now, I've bounced a couple other pickups back in here, and I keep putting the Lindy Fralins back in.
Yeah.
But this is honest, hand on Bible, honest to God, the best playing guitar that I owned before I bought my Novo.
Dude, that is so cool.
And
because it's like, I mean, I love 330s.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's probably top of my list for dream guitars. It's a 64 330 with 330 with nickel covers. But this is like really similarly spec'd for a quarter of the price.
Exactly. And you get semi-hollow instead of fully hollow, which for me, that's a better thing. I think it's a cool sound with the fully hollow, but at the stage volume I play at and the stages I play, I can't control the volume. In fact, the only reason I got the 137 custom, I love that semi-hollow sound. It was my sound.
Yeah.
But this guitar, because of the P90s, was just too noisy on some stages.
Yeah.
And I needed to get some humbuckers.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is my probably going to be in the coffin with me when I die kind of guitar. This is my ride or die. But you're right. The 135s are real hit or miss. You can get real lucky or you can get a real dog.
I saw a bunch of them that had, and it was in the later 2000s, just like the headstock overlay changed to where it looked a lot like cheaper. And then they would just be black finishes and they were all really hazy and they basically just looked like an Epiphone, just like a swirly black finish. Yeah. It's like they're $800 and we got 3 of them. And like, maybe we'll trade some Mexican tellies for them.
So you said it with the 90s Fenders. I feel that way about the 2000 to about 2003 Gibsons. I don't know what was going on with Gibson at that time period, but that like early 2000s, they hit. Like something was happening right in their shop.
So my favorite Gibson electric guitar I've ever owned, what's a tie? I had an 02, Les Paul Classic in black with cream and open pickups, or non-covered humbuckers. And so I was really in like shreddy and heavy bands then. And that thing was just perfect for what I was doing. And it was just so cool. And what always happens with me, and this kind of segues into like buying and selling stuff, is I just like having cool guitars around. And then I get people that come and we hang out and we're friends. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest Les Paul I've ever played. Will you sell this? I don't know. I don't really want to sell it. I'll give you $2,700. All right.
Sure.
I'll go get the case. So that's what happened. That's what happened with I had a dot reissue. And it was a 91 black dot reissue with nickel covers. I wish I wouldn't have sold that guitar, but I sold that one for $3,000. Oh. I only paid $1,200 for it. I was like 21. I was trying to get money to buy I had ordered a custom Husson Dalton and just needed money.
Yeah. No, I feel that. See, and this leads perfectly in because like I was talking about, you hold on, got a cough. All right, you podcast listeners don't get to listen to that, but you YouTube watchers get to watch me convulse.
You get to watch it.
It's horrible.
Wonder.
So you do at a much higher level what I used to do. So in the early 2000s, I got really, really into buying and selling instruments. I've talked about it on the podcast before. A buddy of mine, his dad, who I still think of as a buddy, but it's much older than me, had a shop in Clarksdale. So he used to see stuff coming in and out all the time. And I learned some things from him. And I started hanging out on guitar forums because, YouTube wasn't a thing. And, there wasn't a lot of the other resources that we have now just hanging out on forums, learning about things. And this is before the pedal boom, so you had like 5 pedal companies in existence, and a couple of like big boy amp companies, and boutique amps were starting to come around. Like I had a Dr. Z for a while, and that was a big deal because like
they were kind of the first.
They were in that first crop.
Yeah, and because I mean, do you remember when people were like, "I got a boutique amp, I got a Blue Voodoo."
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's still a crate. It's still a crate.
Yeah,
it's a high dollar crate, but it's a crate.
It did look awesome. Like it had those lights in the grill.
Wasn't Billy Gibbons using them for a little while? I think.
He was playing them, and then
Hagar, Sammy Hagar was also using them.
And then who else was it? It was the guy from Korn. It was a bunch of those new metal guys.
Yeah, I don't know the new metal guys very well. I don't.
Okay.
That was, in fact, I hated both PRS and Mesa for a long time because I hated new metal. I like Mesa. I love them as an amp company. I'm not a PRS fan, but that's not because of that anymore.
Yeah.
They just aren't my instrument. I talked about this last week or week before. They're just not my thing. That I've never played one where the neck felt right.
Yeah. I played one. I had one 2 years ago. I bought out a big collection of guitars, and there was a purple 93 or 94 CE22, and it had like the rotary. So it got all kinds of crazy. I don't even really know what all that the rotary switch did, but I was like, this thing is freaking cool. It looks cool. It was like super faded purple and super like quilty maple, and I was in it $800.
Oh wow!
So I was like, this is cool. Like, and then same exact story. Somebody played it and said, "I'll give you $1,400. Deal." And I like money more than I like some guitars.
Yeah, I get attached to stuff, so it got harder as I started to get more quality stuff. So I started buying and selling. It was how I made money in college to like have spending money. Like
me too.
I was paying tuition, paying rent, and that was fine. I was working to do those kinds of things or whatever. But like I needed some extra spending money, so I do the same thing. Go in pawn shops, go in. And here in Mississippi, you see a lot of PV, whole lot of PV gear. I like PV.
Mississippi Marshalls.
Look, I will never badmouth a PV Classic amp. Those things are good amps.
Dude, they're in Laplace, Louisiana. There is a PV Vintage 610.
I know.
It's been on Craigslist forever.
Yep. I saw you talking about it on one of your Instagram lives, and
I've tried to buy it each time I've been in Louisiana the last 2 years. And I'm like, how will I get that thing 1,000 miles home? I don't care. But I think it's 120 watts.
Yeah.
It's 120 watts with 6 10-inch speakers in one cabinet. It's a combo.
Reminds me of the Super 6s by Fender.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a Super 6, but like, hold my beer.
Right. And that beer is a Bud Light.
Yes.
But yeah, those classics were great. There are a lot of those around here. So you'd see them in a pawn shop, or like, I still remember distinctly, like one deal I found a Blonde, which I think was a Musician's Friend exclusive, Blues Junior, right?
Oh yeah.
Played it for a little while, and then I bought it for like $175.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And this is in like, let's see, who was
Did
I
it have the
dating at
Jensen?
the time? I do not remember. It's been long enough, but so that had to have been like 05, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
so those
06.
the Musician's Friend special run were 2002 to 2004.
Okay.
And then in 06 or 07 they launched the NOS version for all dealers.
Gotcha. Well, this was definitely the Musician's Friend one. Had it for a little while, and then the thing for me, and it was always lower quality, not lower quality. Let's call it budget gear. Up to a certain price point. The thing that was different for me, as opposed to a lot of people that were out there looking at this gear, I was looking in pawn shops. Reverb wasn't a thing. Craigslist was sort of a thing. Facebook Marketplace wasn't a thing. Most of these pawn shops and small music stores in Mississippi didn't pay attention to price guides or any of that stuff. So I would find these deals because I was tech savvy. I'd go on the internet and go on forums and start listing it on forums. And so I'd find stuff locally for a really, really good deal because Mississippi's a depressed area. You lived in Louisiana, you get it, very similar situation. And you find stuff for a deal, you go online, you sell it to someone who has a little more means and is willing to pay a little more money for it, you start making money.
I think that you've come up to one of the things I think is the most helpful thing for figuring out what to buy, all that. Your location and the kind of music that is overpopulated and undervalued around you, you could make some freaking money if you can get those guitars and gear out. I learned that. So I grew up in the Shenandoah Valley and grew up around bluegrass guitars. I mean, Hassan Dalton is 30 minutes from here. Wayne Henderson is close to here. I mean, big bluegrass guitars are just everywhere. And you can find deals on those around here. And so what I would find is I would go to Louisiana. When I moved to Louisiana, I would find guitars. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can find a D28 for $1,400. And I would buy every one I could find, and I'd call my friends up here, and they'd say, I'll give you $2,000. Like, perfect. I'm coming up in a couple weeks. I'll bring it to you. And then my buddy here, you can buy jazz guitars for nothing in the Shenandoah Valley because no one plays jazz around here. And in New Orleans, I could quadruple my money.
Absolutely could.
And people were still super happy getting better deals than they could find on other stuff.
Yeah, because nobody wants to buy from someone they don't know. That's the common denominator, though, is you know most of these people, or you have a contact with some people. They get to actually talk to someone that they're buying from, and not some stranger on the internet off a Reverb account that who knows who Hank at Hank's Budget Gear is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like I saw in one of the Discords I'm in, somebody posted a picture of this crazy, I can't remember if it was a Teisco or if it's one of those weird, like, you know the ones I'm talking
Japanese,
about.
70s.
Sears, Japanese style guitars. And they posted a picture of it from a guitar shop, and they had like $269 on it, right? And they were like, I was like, buy it right now. They were like, oh, please, I'd barely give them $175. I said, I could get $650 for that guitar tomorrow. Here in Mississippi.
Those have gone totally nuts.
Yeah.
I bought and sold 100 of those. I'd buy them for $50. I'd restring them. I'd sell them to a kid learning to play guitar in the valley for $95.
Right.
And I'd feel great doubling money. And now, like, so my friend Elliot runs a shop here in town called Wonder Records. And he just specializes in like quirky early Japanese stuff. And I mean, they're all just insane now.
Oh,
but it takes like an awareness of the market at large to poke into smaller markets and be like, oh no, this is a cool deal. You know, it's also funny because I think you and I are similar. Like, you've been in it long enough that the like encyclopedia of guitar values in your head, we're probably running with some old operating software.
Yep.
Like, because in my mind, I'm still like, Mexican Strat, that's $250. But now it's like, no, those are 400. Those are 400.
The value on that kind of stuff has gone through the roof. Like the Isbell Strat Telecaster came out and it's $1,500 new, and I'm like, that's more than an American Fender. No, it's not anymore. but you get the point I'm making.
Well, no, it's $1,499 is the American Pro 2, right?
Is it really? So it's the same price as an American Pro.
Which I love Jason Isbell. He is my favorite musician.
Yeah.
And that guitar doesn't totally make sense to me.
Oh, really?
I saw it. I was super excited about the spec, super excited about all of it. And then I was like, that's made in Mexico. And I have a hang up on that.
I gotcha.
But also, I'm not a huge new guitar guy.
I've always been a used guitar guy until a couple of years ago. Actually, let me think back. It wasn't all that long ago that I bought my first ever, I think it was the Les Paul. So when JC came in and they announced all the changes to the Les Paul standard, and they said, hey, we're putting it back to the way it should be. Four pots, a 3-way switch, 2 pickups, and good old fashioned rock and roll. I was like, you know what? I'm in. No weight relieved, and I know I should want weight relief because it's heavy, but I was like, all right, I'm going to buy and then drop the price. That was the other thing. They dropped the price from like $3,300 to $2,500, and suddenly I was like, I can't buy a used Les Paul for $2,500, not Les Paul standard, and it's taken 2 years, but I'm starting to see those new price points for those Les Pauls affect used Les Pauls, like the more recent ones. They've had to come down because, if I can get a brand new one for $24.99, I'm not buying your 2014 Les Paul standard for $3,100. It's just not happening. But that was the first brand new guitar I have ever bought.
Man.
And that was in 2019.
Okay, yeah, I've only bought a couple. I bought a 52 Telly reissue in 2009. I guess my first, and then I bought a Martin D35 in 2012. And then I was in a full commission sales gig when I was buying and selling guitars on the side. And I remember, so it was in like 2015, 2016, it's when oil and gas just dropped, like the price of oil went to $11 a barrel, which the economy across the country is roaring, but I was in a sales job tied to selling to oil and gas. And I remember texting a friend of mine like, hey, it's kind of amazing, like gas is the same price it was in high school, except I have 3 kids, I'm in a full commission sales job, and like it's really cheap for me to get gas to go to oil and to refineries, and they can't buy anything I'm selling. And but so around then was when we started looking around, and I had to sell everything that wasn't nailed down. And I think that's where I really came to like, okay, there are no sacred cows. Like there are no guitars that, so I sold 2 guitars. So the D35 that I got was a gift from my boss at the guitar shop. It was a gift that my last day working for him, I'd worked for him for 8 years. I'd put off, like, I went to school part-time. I did everything. Like, I worked full-time here, and I made at minimum wage, and I made everything else work because I just love guitars and wanted to be there. And so my last day, he's like, hey, pick whatever guitar you want in the store. And I picked this D35, and so I had that, and then I had a 61 Gibson J50 that I had owned from that I bought from him a couple of years before, and I had played that guitar 1,000 shows, just played it everywhere I went. And those 2 guitars, I was like, I have a mortgage, I have 3 little kids, I have like, there's no. They got to go. And it's super hard. It's really hard to like undo progress that you've done, in your guitar playing collection. But that's I kind of go, like, I'm Jeremy the guitar collector. And I'm getting to where I have a collection now, but I still feel that trauma from, 6 or 7 years ago of like, oh man, like I've got to sell some stuff. And I've got to move stuff that I am emotionally tied to.
Yeah. And that's a hard place. I was at a point a couple of years ago, last year, and it wasn't nearly that traumatic, but I did get to a point where it's like, you know what, I just moved into a new house, just moved to a new place, needed to raise some funds, and so I sold off a few things. I didn't sell off a lot of stuff, but some of it was stuff that I was flipping for crazy like value. Like I'd had it for a few years, and suddenly the value was crazy. And it's been, to me, the place to find deals lately, because amps have gotten hard to move. They've gotten so, if they can't fit in a carry-on on a plane, basically, they're hard to sell. Like people aren't buying amps like they used to.
But I'm with you.
Yeah.
I have a hunch, and I don't say this out loud because I have just a tiny bit of. And I'm not being facetious. I have very little influence on the guitar market at large.
Right.
But there are a couple things that I've talked about where I'm like, I like this thing, and now I can't afford those things. Like PV Classic 20 combos.
Yeah.
Like Most people that sell those put my video on them where I'm like, this is the coolest amp you can get, and it's so great, and it's totally undervalued, and you should pay a bunch of money for it.
And now you can't get them for that value that you were talking about before.
I would buy one every couple of years for $150 in a pawn shop, and now they're $400, which is still where they should be. I mean, but anyway. But how did I get there? Where did I start?
Amps, buying and selling amps.
With amps. Okay, so I think that my hunch is, because right now we're moving towards modeling, we're moving towards smaller amps, we're moving towards like club-sized amps. But twins sound freaking awesome.
They do.
And supers sound awesome. And
if you listen to this podcast long enough, you know my take on supers.
Yeah, and dude, they're my favorite. If I could only own one blackface, it would be a proper super.
Yeah.
They're just so good. And I think, I don't know, I think 5-10 years from now, I think we could be looking back and being like, why did I not buy up all of these as people are going for smaller amps? So that's what, like that vintage 12 that we were talking about, or that vintage 610.
Yeah.
Like, it's big and ridiculous and boisterous, and eventually somebody, look at bands like Greta Van Fleet, right? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Greta. And you look at those dudes and like, I'm sure that those guys are moving some 412 cabinets for guitar brands.
Or look at Marcus.
Marcus King.
Marcus King. Look at what that guy's out there doing with half stacks on stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, so I've got a 1970 Super in the other room that I've had blackface, and that's going to die with me amp. But you're gonna have to have a big coffin, man.
Yeah,
I know. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna have
just put me in a shipping container.
Ignore the coffin. Just put me on the ground with them. It'll be fine. Don't waste money on a coffin. It's ridiculous. Just put me in a road case. It's way cheaper. You can get those on Craigslist for $100.
I got a guy.
But so to put it in perspective, I bought that Super so when our trailer got stolen, and luckily we had insurance. And when I went out to buy a new amp, I bought that. So I bought that Super in 2006, and I've had it since. So I've been its keeper for 15 years now. I bought that amp for $1,000 in 2006,
especially in $06. That's a good deal.
I bought that for $1,000. I just sold a 1969 Super Reverb for $1,400. Which I then had to go back and pay to get a new replacement speaker because one of them had died, and it was
that's what happened. I had a 67. I forget. It's been a couple of years. I had a 67 that I actually found here. I had a friend coming to Chattanooga. I drove up to Chattanooga. I got it. I brought it back to New Orleans. I fixed it up, and I put it on reverb, and I sold it to a dude in Richmond, Virginia. Like, if it would have just stayed there, it would have been an hour and a half apart. Instead, I did it, and I did. Only time I ever, you remember those like reverb videos where they're like, how to ship an amp?
Oh yeah.
Take out all the tubes, put them in a separate box. I was like, that doesn't make sense, but I'll try it. So I did that, and literally the guy sent me a picture, and it was just like the box had been so smashed that it was just like, it looked like confetti, like what used to be these NOS tubes. And Reverb was like, well, why did you take the tubes out? I was like, your freaking videos. You were the ones that told me.
Yeah. I still take the tubes out, but I do this crazy, insane thing where I take the tubes out, individually wrap them in bubble wrap.
Yeah.
Then I wrap them all in bubble wrap and then put them in their own smaller box in the back of the amp. So,
but it's still like in the cavity of the.
Yeah.
So that's what I didn't do, because there wasn't enough room, because the 410s, all of that.
Oh yeah.
So I did it, and it was on the side, and somehow it just got smashed. But that was, anyway, all that coming back. I don't want to say for sure, but I think my hunch is that people like loud amps. Like, there's coming a day where you're going to want that 212 cabinet. Like, I've cleaned up buying Mesa 212s. Like, anytime I can find them, I can sell those for $550, $600.
Yep.
And so if I can get them for $400 and hang on to them, and they sound awesome and they're amazing quality and they pack such a punch.
I've got an Avatar 212 right now that I've got listed on Reverb for a price that I would take for it today.
Yeah.
But if it does not sell, it does not hurt my feelings, because I have this same feeling that you do, that big amps are coming back in. To wrap up the super story, super reverbs, y'all, I don't do it. I feel like I'm like you. I don't want to tell people to do it, but y'all go buy a 65 blackface super reverb right now, because you can find them if you're patient and you look. You can find them in great condition with original speakers for $1,500 all day.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna find some folks who are asking crazy money. You are, but don't go for that $2,000 plus. $1,500-$1,600. You're gonna get a 65 blackface amp that sounds incredible. And if anybody doubts me how good supers sound, the Dumble was created to replicate the sound of a super. Literally,
I forgot about that.
Alexander Dumble heard Robin Ford playing a tube screamer into a super reverb, blackface super, and that's what inspired him to create the Dumble amps that we all know and love. They're designed to sound like Robin Ford into a super reverb. So, don't go.
That's amazing.
Don't go look for a freaking $125,000 Dumble. Just buy a $1,500 vintage super reverb.
But even like you can find the reissues. And they're not terrible.
No, they're good, and you can find those sub $1,000 used.
Yeah, you can find those if you're lucky. You can find them $500, $600. Yep. 7, 8.
Or like there's this one Facebook ad that's up right now, and this woman has one in a road case, and she's selling it as antique amplifier.
Yes.
And she wants like $1,900. I'm like, it's got an IEC plug. It's a reissue. She doesn't know though. But
bless her heart.
Bless her heart. I think big amps are coming back too. I don't know if you saw my Instagram post a couple of days ago. I posted pictures of mine. I bought a divided by 13.
Awesome.
It's a 39 watt Marshall style amp.
What's that? Do you remember those? So years ago, Ernie Ball. Was it? No, Ernie Ball. No, Electro Harmonix. Electro Harmonix sent out a bunch of like DVDs, like in magazines and mailers. That's the first place I remember hearing about divided by 13.
I remember them just because in the 90s, it felt like everyone played a divided. Everyone who was anybody.
Yeah.
Like Matchbox 20, Alanis Morissette's guitarist was playing them. And I'd see them on other stages. And it was like, they were, for me in the 90s, this is a weird mix. Like everybody had their, like the amps they aspired to, like when in the 2000s for me. Because I didn't take up guitar till 1999, so I was a late starter on guitar.
Okay, me too.
But in the mid 2000s, the amps I was looking at were Mesa Boogie, divided by 13, and Matchless, because they were still pretty regular price back then.
Yeah,
well, regular price, but way more than I could afford at the time. I was still playing my PB Classic 50 back then. I'm pretty sure. But I've got a 2-Rock, which is like an in-game amplifier to me. Got the traditional clean.
Dude, I want a 2-Rock.
I hunted, found the right deal. I had to order a 212 cab, and it actually came in today, and I actually was bummed. I was bummed because I got it in, and I ordered it from a shop. Now they're fixing this, so there's not a sad ending to this. There's just a delayed gratification. They sent me one that matches a different model's cosmetics. So
okay.
But I think things like this are the game changer. I think
that's a Captor X.
Captor X, or the Oxbox, or the Waza tube amp expander. Pick your poison.
Yeah.
Two Notes has several. Sir has a few. I think these things are changing the game for big amplifiers again.
Yeah,
people can use them.
I had a Tone King Imperial Mark II that had an Iron Man in it.
Yep.
So that's not the digital side, but it's the attenuation.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that's when I was like, "Whoa, you can not blow out yours." Because I played in a bunch of pop punk bands, and then I got into metal bands and hardcore. And so I was in like super heavy, loud play basement shows for a long time. And by my mid 20s, I was starting to notice I get a lot of buzzing, I get a lot of weird stuff happening. And so now like I'm all hearing protection all the time.
Yeah.
If it's like it either has to be quieter or I've got to have, earplugs in.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the difference. Like the attenuation on the Iron Man's much better. It's much more variable. But even at like the middle setting, which I think is something crazy, like negative 20 decibels on these, like the middle setting, even like the highest setting is like, it is attenuated at the full. It says full, but it's not. I think it's like a -3.
Okay.
And then like, but at -20, I can take my 100-watt amp. I can get it where I want it. I've got a couple of IRs I love. They're running to front of house.
There you go.
And they feed that back into my monitors. So now I've got a little bit in front of me. I've got the amp still behind me.
Okay, so you got stage volume, some stage volume coming from the amp.
Yeah, it's just, and it's worked beautifully on some of the tiniest stages that I've played and the biggest stages I've played with it. So I think that's the game changer. I think big amps are back in. And I think anyone who doesn't right now, they're dirt cheap.
Dude, okay, so here's my, and I say this all the time. People always come to me and they're like, what is the next thing that's going to be big? What should I buy now that will be? And it's a little bit like reading tea leaves, but I've been in this game long enough to know that there's this 30-year window between people in high school playing guitars and people without, with kids out of college and they're married and they're, all of a sudden they've got way more time than they've ever had, feeling nostalgic.
Right.
And so it's always, and so for the last couple of years, I've been like, if you are not buying up shreddy, locking trim, funky fluorescent color guitars, you're going to miss it. And people are like, no, these are dumb. I'm not going to buy them. And now look at freaking John Mayer. Like that blows my mind. Like think about 20 years ago, if someone would have told you and I, like, hey, in 20 years, John Mayer is going to cause a short. He's going to cause a run on shreddy Ibanez guitars and Jacksons. So that's where, so I think the next phase is going to be, and we're already starting to see it, is all of those like, I think Day Arman's Guild.
Yep.
I think all those funky alternative guitars from the early 90s are going to start coming back.
Yep. Our Guild just reissued one of my favorite models of all time, the Jetstar. My sister played a Day Arman version of it for a while, and I wish we still had it.
Dude, yeah.
But it was a guitar of choice of Muddy Waters. That's about all the that's cool. All the endorsement I need. So
yeah. Man, yeah.
I think that's going to be the way things go. I think we're seeing it. I missed the shreddy guitar by a day. This is literally that shop in Clarksdale I was talking about.
Yeah.
One hung in a Road Cone Orange or Road Flare Orange, RG 550 hung in that shop for must have been 4.5 years. I think it had a price of $250 on it.
Oh my gosh! And I bet. Yeah, and they're like,
I didn't buy.
Give me $175 and get this thing out of here.
And then I was like, finally one day I was like, you know what? I want a shred stick. There's that one up there. I'm gonna go grab it. Went up there to buy it. It had sold the day before, literally the day before. I was like, son of a. But yeah, and now try to get a Road Flare Orange RG 550. Just try.
So a friend of mine was in a band called Brand New Disaster. They were like straight post-punk, like shreddy, mathy stuff in the early 2000s. And they did a show. It was their 500th show. And they were doing an album release and they were doing a giveaway. Like if you bought a record, you got a ticket to do a giveaway. And he gave away a fluorescent yellow RG 650. And he at the time he's like, it's just this worn out guitar. I've played it for 500 shows. I'll give it away. We'll sell this record. And the band broke up about a month later. And like I remember like some girl who kind of played guitar, which that's great. I'm excited, but I didn't win it, and I really wanted it. But it's one of those like at that time you're like, oh, that's a cool $150 gesture. And now it's probably a $1,500 guitar.
It's insane. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think it's really tricky. Like I think the problem is I do not buy guitars for future values. I buy guitars that are worth more right now.
Yeah, because you can't predict. You want to try to,
no way.
And you can try to predict that wave and that movement, but just like we're predicting big amps, that very well may not happen. It may not happen.
No.
I think it's going to though, but it may not happen.
Yeah, but I think also like what you and I are factoring in is it's a couple $100. Like
right.
if I can get a twin, a 70s twin for $400, I don't care that much.
Yeah.
If it becomes a $200 amp in 10 years, like, well, I'll just write off that $200 as I rented this cool amp for a couple of years. I pissed off my neighbors with it. And,
shattered a few windows,
Yeah.
Made a few dogs howl. Mm-hmm. Ended some marriages because they couldn't sleep.
One of the biggest things for me is like I have this deep love for guitars and desire to have more guitars, but it has to be third in my affections. Like my wife, like I have to give a good life to my wife and take care of her and fulfill promises to her. And I have to be good to my kids and help prepare for their college. And so for me, I'm like, I love guitars, but they can't even be in the top 3 really.
Right.
Like, so that's where I'm like, I have to figure out a way for this to be good. So that means I rarely ever buy new guitars because
they're
new
not
guitar
likely
dollars,
to go up in value.
No.
I bought that Firebird that's behind me new recently, but I got a really good deal on it because I know the guys at the shop.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I really like that one. But
yeah.
But it's not going to go up in value, most likely. Most likely. I'm going to say likely.
Oh, man. So the other calculation I've started doing is like when people are like, I only paid $1,600 for this guitar 25 years ago. And then you're like, start adjusting that number for inflation. Like even if that number, it just kept up with dollars for dollars.
Right.
It's like, well, you actually have $2,300 in that thing. Or okay. Because that's the thing that blows my mind. So last summer I bought a 67 Martin D28. And the guy paid $400 for it in 67.
Right.
And if you do the math, $400 in 67 adjusted for inflation is $38.99 in today's dollars. How much is a Martin D28 right now? They're $38.99. It's crazy.
Yeah, and what you want to do is you want to tell them, you know what? If you're playing that long a game, you should have put that money in the stock market.
Yes.
And just sat on it. You'd have had a lot more money than $38.99.
That's why, like, I think go full blown Dave Ramsey on your financial world. That's the only way I get to do what I'm doing now. Like, we have no debt other than our house,
right?
And so for me, I'm like, we can make it work, and yeah,
that's something I'm working on. The debt thing. I don't have a lot. I don't have a whole lot. Student loans and house and car, but. We have credit cards, but we don't overly spend on them. We just took a trip to Omaha to the College World Series. I'm sorry, guys, sports. I know it's not Guitar World usually doesn't talk sports, but got a little bit of our expenses on there, but they're going to be taken off here soon. But don't go into debt
I think
for guitars. Just don't do it.
Do not.
I'm a big believer
because the other thing is like.
Well, I was going to say I'm a big believer in. If you're playing and you like, I'm not going to tell someone else their financial business. And if you can get it and you can pay it off and it's no interest, then I'm sort of like, okay, that's not as big a deal to me.
Yeah.
But that's assuming you're going to pay it off. Like I bought that Les Paul on no interest financing, right?
Yeah.
Paid it off. No big deal. As long as you're not spending extra money, because if you're spending extra money on it, you're wasting your money.
Yeah. Now I think, we tend to undervalue risk. And so you're like the risk of like, for me, when I was in a full commission sales gig, it's just like, I don't know. I'm only ever as good as my last commission. So I'm not going to borrow money on the future. Like, but I think also, and this is anecdotal. It's just my own experience, but my experience is like, I buy guitars at a slower pace, but I get to keep all of them. Like, they're coming and going on my terms.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like coming out of that conversation we had earlier, which is like when just our whole world got crazy financially and I had to sell 2 of my most dear guitars. that was when it's like, oh, we'd done a couple things that outpaced our spending and we were committed to stuff. And I had 2 car payments and so that's where there's this kind of voice in my head of like, never again. Like, let's get in a financial place where this is like fun and causes my family to, like, it benefits my family and I get to play really freaking cool guitars.
I've had that conversation with myself about we're not outpaced. And that's the other thing is you got to know your pacing and, and working sales. That's a crazy world that I'm glad I don't do. I work in a much more stable field.
Yeah.
Where things have really got to go haywire for me to be too insecure. But no one is 100% secure. Let's be honest. You can't you're weighing that risk. But I've done that math with myself. I'm like, all right, if I had to go down to a guitar or 2 guitars and an amp, can I do it? And absolutely could. And, that's the way I look at a lot of this stuff. It's like 2 Rock, for example. That's a dream amp for me. It's right here off screen. I know nobody can see it, but it's a dream amp for me. But if things got tight, it'd be one of the first things to go because I don't need that. My Super can do everything I need it to do. Every gig that I've ever needed to play, I can take that Super, and that's it. That's the only amp I need.
Yeah.
Same thing with the divided by 13 or like that Strat. I love that Strat, but if I needed to sell it, I could sell it, and it wouldn't destroy me. I love that guitar, but again, Fender's making some of the best guitars they've ever made. I can get another one down the road. That's not my end of the line guitar. Like probably that 135 wouldn't go anywhere, and my Novo wouldn't go anywhere. And
we haven't talked about Novos, which I want a Novo. So I was supposed to go hang out. So I left a full-time job as a marketing director in February of 2020, which with benefits for my family, a good match in my retirement. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try YouTube. I'm going to go full. And we made it. So didn't die, but it got real crazy for a while.
Yeah, I bet.
So one of the first things I was supposed to do, I was supposed to go to the Asheville Guitar Show with John Schultz from True Vintage. We were going to hang out. We were going to make a bunch of YouTube videos. We were both driving to the guitar show and it got canceled. Oh. And my plan was after Asheville, I was going to go over to Nashville and hang out with the dudes from Novo and film a video with them. And that also didn't happen. And so we're now like a year and a half later.
Oh.
And so I have a bunch of family in Nashville. And so we're in Nashville 3 times a year for about a week or 2 weeks at a time. So that's where like I want to go. But tell me more about your Novo.
I lived in Murfreesboro for a couple of years actually.
And,
cool. I love Nashville. It's like second home to me. I would not hurt my feelings to retire to that area of the country. Not Nashville. It's gotten too big, and so is Murfreesboro. But Central Tennessee-ish.
Yeah.
I love that living. But this I'm hoping I'm going to NAMM is next week. This episode, by the way, y'all, we were recording on Wednesday before this episode airs. It's going to go out tomorrow morning. Which means I'll be up tonight editing. I'm hoping to go buy Novo since I was not able to pick this up in person. I ordered this in August of last year.
So cool.
It's gold, top gold with 3-tone sunburst.
Ceres?
Yeah, this is the Ceres J. So it's got the mastery. And I went whole hog. I went, color over color. So I've got the 3-tone sunburst with gold top over it. I bought secondhand some Amalfitano pickups to put in here. A guy in the Novo group, shout out Will, in the Novo group on Facebook, sold them to me very cheaply, very, very cheaply. Like he should not have sold them to me this affordably, but I'm very thankful he did. I did blocks and binding because I think it should be bound and blocked because it just looks good. And this is I talked about it on the podcast before, so those of you who listened to it before, this is my homage to my love for both Fender and Gibson. The 3-tone sunburst, color over color.
Third way.
Yeah, the gold tops, the whole Gibson thing. Then the headstock is very Gibson-y to me with the color scheme.
Yeah.
Gold over black.
The black and gold, yeah.
But I love this guitar. It is my last gig, which was a week ago, a little over a week ago now,
That was a good one.
Thank you. Yeah,
There was a cough, and you didn't even.
Yeah, I'm getting good at this. I last gig I played, I took just this guitar, and I can't tell you the last time I did one guitar to a gig.
Yeah,
and this was it. So I know for a fact that I don't need any of this other stuff behind me. Well, an acoustic, I still need an acoustic, but
you need a couple acoustics.
yeah, I've got this one is a Larrivee DO5.
Love it. Love Larrivee.
Yeah, me too. This one right here, I'm not good at pointing behind me like this. That's a Gibson J15.
Hey,
so
love those.
Yeah, they're really good.
And Gibson, my recent what the hell Gibson is them like why would you kill the J15? It is the best guitar they made under $3,000.
Well, they didn't totally kill it. They call it a J45 Studio now. It's basically the same guitar.
Okay.
The scale is different though. The size is different. That's a bigger guitar than the J45 Studio. The J15 is actually the size of a J45. I didn't think it was, but a buddy of mine bought a J45 Studio, so I brought mine over to compare them, and sure enough, mine's bigger. It's just got a bigger body.
What?
I know it didn't make sense. Did not make sense.
Okay.
But I love the Larrivee. Had that one for a little while. We were in talks with a record label for a little while, and we were given a little money from a benefactor to buy guitars in a band that I was in. And
awesome.
That was the one I bought. I think I'm the only member of that band that still has the guitar they bought with the money they gave them.
Wow.
I love that Larrivee.
Those are freaking sleepers. They are so good.
Once again, another guitar you can get affordably used because not everybody understands how good they are. Quality rivals anything that Martin and Gibson are putting out.
If you can get a DO3, I mean, DO3s are up to $1,200 now, $1,000.
Yeah.
That's another one that I unfortunately I bought every one I could find in New Orleans. Whoever was selling those in the early 2000s in New Orleans did a great job to people that did not continue playing guitar. And I bought them for $300, $500.
Oh my gosh.
And I would just double and triple my money. And they're amazing guitars.
Yep.
I bought a DO3 that I actually sold to a friend here in the Valley. And it is every bit as good as a Martin D18.
Yep.
Mahogany back and side, spruce top, like a Canon, ebony bridge, ebony fingerboard.
That's how I feel about that one. That's my D18. Yep. I don't need a D18 because I've got that.
Exactly. Now, is that a Yamaha 12-string back there?
That is. So local shop here in Starkville has this really...
I didn't know you're in Starkville.
Yeah, I'm in Starkville. Here, Mississippi State University just won the College World Series. That's why I was over there in Omaha last week.
Awesome.
Last week. Sorry, it's all blurring together to me. But so this Yamaha 12-string, the local store here in town, Backstage Music, does a community yard sale day. I don't know what to call it. I forgot what they called it. But in the first weekend in June every year, they didn't do it last year, which was my first June in Starkville. I moved here in February of last year. Took a new job February of last year.
Yeah. Just under the wire.
Just under the wire. Because I was in Hattiesburg before then. Well, outside of Hattiesburg. But
so you say Starkville, but you don't say Hattiesburg.
No, it's Hattiesburg. I
don't know, man.
Some of them do say Hattiesburg. It's funny because someone just posted a picture.
Old guys say Hattiesburg.
They someone just posted on the side from the side of a building down there. I think it's just been built, and they had painted the name Hattiesburg on the side of it, but they left out the E, so it was Hattiesburg. They just painted it like everybody says it.
Hattis.
But so they do a day where they invite the community to come, set up outside, sell your stuff.
Yeah.
What have you got that you want to sell? No seller fees, nothing like that. Just come. What have you got to sell? And then it also gives them a chance to clear out some stuff in the back room, some beater junk, maybe some repair work that didn't come get picked up, that kind of stuff. Well, that was sitting on their front porch for $20.
Whoa.
$20. And hold on. It needs a whole lot of work still. I did my best. I did some work on the neck.
I mean, they all play hard and have high action.
Yeah, exactly. But it plays. It sounds good.
That's awesome.
Basically a set of strings and some elbow grease. Got it cleaned up. Got it playing, and it's a good usable cowboy chord 12-string.
That's killer.
It absolutely is. I brought it home and immediately rocked out the album intro version for Maggie May. I was like, yes,
of course,
finally play that correctly.
Yeah. Well, that's better than like the what's the other one that everybody does? On a steel horse I ride. That's the normal.
Yeah, the action is not going to allow me to play that riff on that guitar.
Yeah, that's too high.
That's not happening. Yeah, I've definitely played that song a bunch in bars. Never with a 12-string because I'm not taking a 12-string for that song. It's just not happening.
We're going to turn it down for a minute, boys.
I'll just put some chorus on. It'll be fine.
Yeah. The best heckle I ever got was I was in a metal band, and I'm not a lead player, but I was trying to, so we were in a shreddy kind of 80s metal Swedishy band. And I was trying to do a solo, and this dude. So we had this song that had a really catchy chorus for a metal song, and and in the middle there was this chunk where I tried to play a lead, and this dude I'm beep, bop, bop, beep, bop, 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 trying to get through this solo terribly, and this guy, I just hear him yell from the back like, "Hey, don't bore us! Get to the chorus." 2, 3, 4, and then we jumped into the chorus.
Oh, that's so good. I need that on a t-shirt now.
Don't bore us, get to the chorus.
Yeah. Y'all be looking, it might end up in the Teespring store.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a cool slogan. I'm gonna put that on something.
Yeah.
But for $20 and a set of strings, I was like,
seriously,
I'll take that all day long. 20.
Yeah, that's fun, man.
$20. Well, I'll tell you what, we've been talking for a while. We're going to wrap up the regular episode. And listeners, make sure you check us out on social media. Go to our website, 40wattpodcast.com. Go to Patreon, patreon.com/40wattpodcast, where for $5 a month, you can get all of the bonus Patreon exclusive content, like the episode we're about to record, where I'm going to try to talk Jeremy into giving us his 3 best tips for buying and selling used gear.
So we're gonna go crazy.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be nuts. I'm gonna get him to give you some insider stuff that you don't get anywhere else. So go over to Patreon, subscribe. You can get that content. It is available as you're hearing this. So, Jeremy, appreciate you coming on. We're gonna talk a little more.
This was so fun.
I love it. We need to do this again. It'll have to happen soon. Maybe it can happen we'll plan a trip to Nashville. We'll just go hang out.
Yes.
We'll video some guitar hunting in the stores there.
Yes, absolutely. We'll go hang out with my boy Bo at Carter Vintage, and we'll see some cool stuff.
Carter's my favorite guitar store in the country. I'm going there next week. Actually, I'm scheduled to go in.
I need to go to. Yeah, we need to do that. Let's go to Chicago. I haven't been to Chicago Music Exchange, so I got to change that.
I've been there, and it is actually Chicago Music Exchange is the first place I played a Novo. And so that back when they did dealers, back when they had dealers, and that was like in 2016. That was like a long time ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I had to watch Rhett Shull playing his Novo all the freaking time, and then I had to have one. Jerk. So we're gonna wrap up. I appreciate y'all hanging out with us, listening, watching, whatever you're doing. Remember, rate and review the podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, thumbs up, leave a comment for the algorithm, as they say. I appreciate your support in any way that you do it. Share us with a friend. Tell somebody else that you know that loves guitars about this podcast. If all of our listeners told one person about this podcast, that in and of itself is as great a support as I could ask for. In the meantime, y'all be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and try to make some noise.